Simon Nyoku Ekpa, the controversial leader of the Biafran government in exile, is facing a possible breakthrough in his legal battle. After Spanish courts handed Carlo Ancelotti a suspended sentence for tax fraud, hopes are rising that Simon Ekpa may receive similar treatment in Finland, especially as a first-time offender. But this story isn't just legal. It's political, emotional, and global. From a disturbing video of a Nigerian military officer threatening Biafrans, to ipob distancing itself from Ekpa's government, and even Donald Trump leaving Nigeria's president off his African summit guest list, the shockwaves are massive. In this deep analysis, we break down the courtroom battle, the political chaos, and the rising global support for Biafran self-determination. Has the tide finally turned in Simon Ekpa's favor, or will the Finnish courts ignore international precedent and impose a harsh sentence? A Spanish court ruling involving football coach Carlo Ancelotti, who received a suspended sentence for tax fraud due to being a first-time offender, has raised hopes that Simon Ekpa's own tax fraud charge in Finland may result in a non-custodial sentence due to similar legal provisions. Unverified reports suggest that Simon Ekpa is preparing a legal blueprint to sue the Finnish government for allegedly violating his human rights and freezing his financial assets after his arrest in November 2024. A Nigerian military officer was seen in a disturbing video making threats against Biafrans and comparing them to Boko Haram, revealing a pattern of illiteracy and misconduct within the military ranks. The indigenous people of Biafra, ipob, released a statement reaffirming loyalty to Nnamdi Kanu and dissociating itself from the self-styled Biafran government in exile, labeling it unauthorized and illegitimate. Former militant Asari Dokubo, once a staunch supporter of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has now publicly cut ties with Yoruba politicians, claiming betrayal and declared alignment with northern political leaders, a move many see as opportunistic. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar insists on participating in open primaries for the 2027 presidential election, dismissing Southern leaders' calls for him to step aside in favor of a Southern candidate. In the United States, a group of peaceful protesters praised Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traoré and urged Donald Trump to emulate his anti-colonial, pan-African and populist leadership style. Nigerian Senate President Godswill Akpabio claimed senators struggle financially after leaving office, prompting backlash due to the massive salaries, pensions and benefits Nigerian lawmakers receive. Nigerian author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie condemned a southern political figure named Kenneth Okonkwo for saying he won't support any southern presidential candidate, describing it as a betrayal of southern unity and an example of political selfishness. Donald Trump invited 5 African leaders to a White House summit, excluding Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, allegedly due to unresolved issues tied to Tinubu's past FBI-linked financial forfeiture case. They said he had no chance, but now the courtroom echoes with a whisper of hope. It began not with celebration or triumph, but with silence. A courtroom in Spain, miles away from the Arctic discipline of Finland, suddenly cast a long shadow of possibility over the frozen fate of a man many thought had already lost. On that day in Madrid, the Spanish justice system delivered a ruling that did not involve violence, political slogans, or street protests. It simply gave a suspended sentence to one of the world's most renowned football coaches, Carlo Ancelotti, after he was found guilty of tax fraud. The punishment was lenient, merciful even, not because the crime was excusable, but because the law had space for understanding. The moment this ruling was announced, eyes turned, some in hope, others in disbelief, towards Simon Nyoku Ekpa, the embattled political activist and leader of the self-styled Biafran government in exile, who is currently facing a similar tax-related charge in the cold chambers of a Finnish courtroom. Simon Nyoku Ekpa's legal troubles are not isolated incidents floating in a vacuum. They are deeply tangled in the political storm surrounding Biafra, a region in southeastern Nigeria with a long, painful history of marginalization, a brutal civil war, and now a fresh generation of separatist activism fueled by memory, identity, and injustice. His arrest in November 2024 was sudden, dramatic, and controversial. Following his detention by Finnish authorities, his financial assets were reportedly frozen. His communication channels were interrupted. He became, in many ways, a ghost in the digital corridors where he once thundered with revolutionary zeal. This brings us to the present crisis, where multiple problems converge into one emotionally charged narrative. The core issue is not just Simon Nyoku Ekpa's tax charge in Finland. It is about justice, law, power and perception. A man is accused of tax fraud in a foreign country. He claims his rights have been violated. The state says it acted by the book. Supporters see political suppression. Critics see legal accountability. Somewhere in this mess is the truth. But how did we get here? The issue began after months of rising political influence by Simon Nyoku Ekpa across Africa and in the diaspora, especially within the Biafran separatist movement. As his voice grew louder, calling for self-determination and accusing the Nigerian government of genocide and discrimination against the Igbo people, so too did the scrutiny from European authorities. In November 2024, Finnish law enforcement arrested him, citing tax evasion and possible incitement of violence. His accounts were frozen. His electronic devices were seized. The media, especially Nigerian and diaspora outlets, exploded with fury and confusion. The emotional and political significance of the arrest overshadowed the details of the charges. According to Finnish prosecutors, Simon Nyoku Ekpa allegedly failed to declare income linked to crowdfunding and digital transactions from his international supporters. Some believe the amount was modest and fell into a grey legal area. Others argue it was part of a broader pattern of concealment. What makes the situation explosive is that Simon Nyoku Ekpa, unlike an ordinary tax offender, is a politically exposed person. His influence over the Biafran movement, his frequent calls for civil disobedience in southeastern Nigeria, and his constant clashes with Nigerian military authorities made him a lightning rod. And yet, while the courtroom in Finland debates over spreadsheet entries and unreported transactions, something unexpected happened. Carlo Ancelotti, a respected football manager, was found guilty of tax fraud in Spain. But the court granted him a suspended sentence, meaning he would not serve jail time, citing that it was his first offense and that he had cooperated. The Spanish ruling, though technically unrelated, caused a legal and emotional ripple across Europe. Immediately, Simon Nyoku Ekpa's legal team and supporters began comparing the two cases. Could Finnish courts offer similar leniency? Could the precedent from Madrid provide moral or even legal weight in Helsinki? It did not take long for this comparison to gain traction. Unverified reports suggest that Simon Nyoku Ekpa is already crafting a legal blueprint, preparing to sue the Finnish government. He claims that freezing his financial assets without proper court orders or transparent investigation violates his human rights. His lawyers are expected to argue that not only is the charge minor in scale, but it also occurred under duress, considering the politically volatile nature of his work. If Carlo Ancelotti could walk free in Spain, why not Simon Nyoku Ekpa in Finland? But the battle is far from over, because this is not just about taxes anymore. It is about politics, identity, and fear. Just days before the news from Spain broke, a shocking video surfaced from Nigeria. In it, a high-ranking military officer was seen addressing troops and making dangerous comparisons. He likened Biafran agitators to the Boko Haram terrorist group and spoke in a language riddled with hate, ignorance, and dangerous assumptions. The video, widely circulated on social media, sent chills through the Biafran community. It was not just an offhand comment. It was a glimpse into the mindset of a system that has, for decades, refused to acknowledge the unique historical pain of the southeastern region of Nigeria. Many Biafrans saw it as proof that their fears were valid, that the state viewed them as enemies even before they acted. The video also exposed the systemic rot within the Nigerian military, where loyalty is often demanded more than competence, and public statements are made without consequence. Activists condemned the video, analysts dissected it, politicians ignored it. In response to growing confusion and division within the Biafran camp, the indigenous people of Biafra, often abbreviated as ipob, released a powerful statement. In it, they reaffirmed their unwavering loyalty to their detained leader, Nnamdi Kanu, who has been in the custody of the Nigerian government since June 2021, following a controversial international rendition. They also made it clear that they do not recognize Simon Nyoku Ekpa's self-declared Biafran government in exile. They called it unauthorized, illegitimate, and dangerous to the unity of the cause. This open rebuke revealed the growing fractures within the Biafran movement. While Simon Nyoku Ekpa and his followers operate in the digital and diplomatic spaces abroad, IPOB's loyalists in Nigeria face daily harassment, military raids, and media censorship. Their priorities differ, their methods differ, their egos too sometimes clash, and now their legal fates may also differ. Meanwhile, Asari Dokubo, once a passionate defender of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the Nigerian state, shocked everyone with a sudden political about-face. In a fiery speech, he declared he was no longer aligned with Yoruba political leaders. He accused them of betrayal and double-dealing. Instead, he announced his allegiance to northern politicians, in particular those who have supported his private security operations in the Niger Delta. The move is being seen by many as deeply opportunistic. Asari Dokubo has reinvented himself many times, from militant warlord to political contractor to cultural ambassador. But this latest pivot suggests he is preparing for another political play, possibly one linked to the 2027 general elections. Speaking of elections, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar continues to stir the political waters. At a time when many in the southern region of Nigeria are calling for a rotational presidency, urging northern leaders to step aside, Atiku Abubakar has insisted on contesting the open primaries. He argues that democracy is best served when all candidates, regardless of zone or ethnicity, are allowed to compete. Critics say his position is tone-deaf. Supporters say he is consistent. Either way, it adds fuel to an already volatile political landscape where ethnic loyalty often overshadows merit and where electoral rules are constantly bent to fit the ambitions of powerful men. Beyond the borders of Nigeria, another kind of protest is gaining traction. In Washington, D.C., a group of African and African-American protesters gathered peacefully near the White House. They carried signs bearing the image of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the young military leader and president of Burkina Faso. Their message was clear. They admired his Pan-African, anti-colonial, and defiant style of leadership. Some even urged former United States President Donald Trump to be like Traoré, bold, unapologetic, and revolutionary. The symbolism of this protest cannot be ignored. It suggests a rising appetite for leaders who defy global norms, who speak to the people directly, and who are not afraid of international backlash. It also signals that Simon Yoku Ekpa's popularity, though controversial, is part of a larger global conversation about power, sovereignty, and resistance. Meanwhile, back in Nigeria, the political class continues to amaze and confuse. Nigerian Senate President Godswill Akpabio recently declared that many senators struggle financially after leaving office. The statement sparked immediate outrage. The Nigerian public, already burdened by inflation, unemployment, and poor infrastructure, viewed the comment as insulting. Senators in Nigeria are among the highest-paid lawmakers in the world, with massive salaries, pensions, and allowances that often remain hidden from public scrutiny. For Godswill Akpabio to suggest they suffer financially was not just false, it was deeply offensive. Award-winning Nigerian author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie also entered the political fray. In a scathing letter, she condemned a political figure from southern Nigeria named Kenneth Okonkwo for publicly stating that he would not support any southern candidate for president. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie accused him of betrayal, of abandoning the dreams of southern unity, and of playing into the hands of those who benefit from division. Her message was simple but powerful. Political selfishness destroys nations. All of this unfolds as news breaks from Washington. Former United States President Donald Trump has invited 5 African leaders to a private summit at the White House. The goal is to strengthen economic ties and discuss immigration and trade. But one name was conspicuously missing from the guest list: President Bola Ahmed Tinubu of Nigeria. Analysts believe this exclusion is no accident. Whispers from diplomatic sources suggest that unresolved issues tied to Bola Ahmed Tinubu's past financial forfeiture case linked to the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the United States may still haunt him. The message from Washington seems clear. Some ghosts do not forget. So where does this leave Simon Yoku Ekpa? In a courtroom far from the sounds of protest and the banners of revolution, his fate may be decided not by ideology, but by legal precedent. If the Finnish judiciary sees in him what the Spanish court saw in Carlo Ancelotti, a first-time offender caught in a technical web with no history of violence, he may walk away with his freedom. But if they see a man who has used his platform to inflame tensions, to challenge state sovereignty, and to rally thousands under a flag not recognized by the world, the sentence may be harsh. The outcome is uncertain, but one thing is clear: this story is far from over. And whether from the snow-covered streets of Helsinki or the sun-baked soil of Aba, millions are watching, waiting, and hoping for justice, for clarity, for peace. And still, as the world watches this drama unfold across multiple continents, the human toll of this crisis remains deeply personal. Behind every headline about Simon Yoku Ekpa, Carlo Ancelotti, or the latest political intrigue are real people whose lives have been altered. In the southeast of Nigeria, where the name Biafra carries the memories of a devastating war, many families live in fear. fear of military raids, fear of unknown gunmen, fear of being caught between a divided movement and an unbending state. To them, Simonyoku Ekpa is not just a name, he is a symbol. Whether as a hero, a rebel, or a controversial figure, his arrest in Finland and ongoing prosecution has rippled through markets, churches and town halls across Imo, Abia, Ebonyi, Anambra and Enugu states. In Aba, a once thriving commercial hub, now marked by periodic shutdowns and tension, traders speak in hushed tones about the situation. Some of them recall the days when Simonyoku Ekpa's broadcasts would instruct markets to close in honor of Biafra martyrs or as part of civil disobedience. Others criticize the approach, saying the economic impact was too great for already struggling families. But what none of them ignore is how his voice, carried through smartphones and radio speakers, has changed the psychological landscape of the Southeast. And now that same voice is threatened with silence by a foreign court. The possibility of a non-custodial sentence, inspired by the Carlo Ancelotti case in Spain, is beginning to build quiet hope among supporters. Legal experts in Helsinki are reportedly divided. Some say that Finnish law, like many European legal systems, often favors rehabilitation over incarceration, especially for first-time, non-violent offenses. Others argue that the political weight of the Simonyoku Ekpa case may pressure the courts to take a tougher stance, fearing that leniency could be interpreted as an endorsement of separatism. For now, the public remains suspended in legal limbo. Back in Nigeria, the reactions remain polarizing. The federal government has not made any official statement about the Spanish court ruling or its possible influence on Simonyoku Ekpa's trial. However, behind the scenes, sources suggest that high-ranking officials in the Ministry of Justice and the National Intelligence Agency are closely monitoring the proceedings. There are even unconfirmed whispers of quiet diplomatic outreach between Abuja and Helsinki, with Nigeria reportedly trying to ensure that the full gravity of Simonyoku Ekpa's political activities is understood by the Finnish authorities. In essence, the Nigerian government does not want his tax fraud case to be treated as a mere accounting error. They believe it is a fragment of a much larger threat. This is where the issue of international politics becomes increasingly relevant. In an age where European governments are growing more sensitive to migration, extremism, and digital influence, Simonyoku Ekpa's activities raise questions about how far political activism from the diaspora can go before it crosses into incitement. His online broadcasts have been accused of encouraging civil unrest, calling for military desertions, and mocking the sovereignty of the Nigerian state. But his defense team insists that everything he has said is protected speech, guaranteed under Finland's constitutional right to free expression. And therein lies the clash between state security and personal liberty, between Africa's national interests and Europe's liberal legal traditions. Adding fuel to this already combustible situation is the internal drama within the Biafran movement itself. The indigenous people of Biafra, under the leadership of detained activist Nnamdi Kanu, have made it clear that they do not recognize the so-called Biafran government in exile, led by Simonyoku Ekpa. Their public statement was not just a polite disassociation. It was a full-throated denunciation, describing Simonyoku Ekpa's structure as unauthorized, divisive, and damaging to the collective goal of self-determination. This split has caused enormous confusion among international observers. For years, ipob has been the most visible face of the Biafran cause. But now, with different factions emerging, some abroad, some within Nigeria, some acting independently, the coherence of the Biafran narrative is under threat, and with confusion comes vulnerability. Nigerian security forces, always quick to exploit division, have intensified operations in the southeast, citing the disunity as evidence that the movement lacks credible leadership. Among the tragic consequences of this political disarray are the ordinary people caught in the crossfire. Young men accused of being members of the Eastern Security Network, IPOB's now fragmented defense wing, are routinely arrested without trial. What do you think? Should Simon Ekpa be set free like Carlo Ancelotti? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This is a global conversation, and your voice matters. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in this powerful story. This is the end of our news update. Please click the icon on the top right corner of your screen to watch my next video. You will enjoy it. I will see you again in my next update. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye for now.